pass and actually made a road trip out to nationals one year when it was in Terre Haute. So,
Oh yeah,
we've had his name has come up a few times on here with different guests. So, it's always fun. I saw you're a pilot, so we'll probably get into that a little bit too, and your connection with Coach Connor and that impact that it had with you. But
sure.
yeah, we always try to make those small world connections right off the bat just to kind of
Yeah.
break the ice a little bit. But um, a little bit before we get rolling here, when we started doing this in 2019, it started as a master class for Jimmy and I, where, whatever we're into, we were both athletes. Jimmy was a wrestler, I was a runner, I still run. So we have people from all walks of life in those fields, and you name a topic, we've had a guest to cover it. But over the last 3 years, it's kind of morphed a little bit where it's still a master class, but Jimmy and I are just trying to create conversations with coaches like you, to get the word out so that people know about programs all over the country, conversations that we wish we would have heard when we were going through the recruiting process, because
Hmm.
it's a great big country out there. There's a lot of colleges and universities, both 2-year, 4-year institutions. And if you're a committed student athlete and you want to go to the next level, there's a place where we can find it. So, as New Jersey people, our goal is to get at least one New Jersey athlete to all of the coaches that we have on the podcast. And, in our sports, wrestling and cross country and track and field, New Jersey has a very rich tradition of athletes. So we're going to do our best to get a Jersey kid in a Bulldog uniform if you haven't had one yet.
We've got one right now. He's on his way out. He had a really, really strong career for us as a graduate transfer, Austin Gabay, and has been an integral part of our success over the last 2 years. And he's definitely Jersey through and through. So you're getting authentic
Okay.
piece right there with Austin.
Okay. You'll have to ask him tomorrow when you see him, or the next time you see him, ask him if it's pork roll or Taylor ham.
Okay,
And that
sounds
will
good.
tell you where he is from in New Jersey. If he says Taylor ham, he's from North Jersey. If he says pork roll, he's probably from Central or South Jersey.
Got it. Love it. Love it.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to get into it with you. I'll give us a little intro here and we'll get rocking and rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, howdy and aloha. We are here and you are there and you are now rocking with the best. We appreciate you tuning in for another live episode of Airey Bros Radio. If you're new to the show, welcome to the channel where we spotlight the coaches, programs, stories across cross country, track and field, and wrestling that deserve more shine. But before we get rolling, y'all know the drill. Make sure you smash that like button and are subscribed on YouTube. Drop a comment in the chat. We see you in there. And as always, this episode is fueled by Black Sheep Endurance for all your ultra marathon and nutrition coaching needs. And let's not forget, this is a value for value show. So if you're getting any value out of anything we're doing over here and you do feel so inclined, please click on that link, buy us a coffee. You know how much Jimmy and I love our Java. Tonight's guest, we're heading to Indianapolis, Indiana, to talk with one of the most accomplished distance coaches in the NCAA. Coach Matt Roe is joining us tonight from Butler University. Since taking over the program in 2007, Coach Roe hasn't just coached the team, he's built the culture of climbing the mountain. Under his leadership, the Bulldogs have transcended conference boundaries, dominating the Horizon League, the Atlantic 10, and now in the Big East. He has led Butler to 15 conference team titles, including a dominant run in the Big East, where his men's cross country team has won 4 of the last 6 titles, most recently this past fall in October. And they finished the season 16th at NCAAs in Missouri. In 2013, the Butler women made a historic run, finishing 3rd at the NCAA Cross Country Championships, the highest NCAA finish for any women's program in school history. To date, he has mentored 47 All-Americans, 40-plus NCAA individual finalists, and over 120 individual conference champions. He's a 4-time conference coach of the year, and we are honored to have him with us tonight. We do greatly appreciate your time. Coach Matt Roe, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, it is an honor to chat with you. Like I said, we are running geeks, through and through. We were cross-country guys, distance guys on the track. And so we know about Butler. We've been following for a long time. And so it's excited to chat with you. It's cool to know that you're a Portland pilot as well, too, because we know about Coach Rob Connor. So we'll be excited to pick your brain a little bit about that as well. Before we do get into it too far, anything you would like to plug or promote, anywhere we can send recruits, parents, anyone that has questions for you, anywhere you want people to find you on social media, the floor is yours.
Well, I think people can find us on Instagram. That's probably our greatest follow. So you can look that up. But otherwise, I'm hoping people connect with this, and hopefully I can be of service and helpful to you along the way with any insights in my experience.
Awesome. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes for you as well. We already kind of got through the through line, but one of the ways we like to kick it off here, we all have our origin stories, how we got into the sport, how that led us to coaching. Mine started as a 5-year-old in a local Rotary 5-mile race, and first prize for 10 and under was a fish tank, and it's been off to the races ever since then. So how did you get into the sport of running? How did that lead you to coaching?
Well, my initial love was basketball, and I played all the way through high school at a pretty high level. And that was the pathway that I thought I was going to go collegiately. But along the way, we had these things in PE class, right? We used to have the presidential fitness test, and then when I was in the first grade, we had just a cross country run, and I was just like way ahead of my classmates. And then we'd have this presidential run. It was the 600 yards, I think, at the time, and it just came natural to me. And so when I got into 7th grade, I had to choose between playing baseball, which I played a little bit, and running track. And I just on a whim picked track, off of running a decent mile in gym class untrained. And then slowly running caught basketball. In 8th grade, I ran pretty fast. And then into high school, I chose both. And so I did both in high school, but I was being recruited at a Division I level to run and not as much in basketball. And so by the time I was a sophomore, I kind of realized that I was going to be running in college. And I always had a passion for, like, I'm trying to understand how people operated in coaching and like the psychology behind it. And so I think coaching was always in my blood. I come from a single parent home, and some of my biggest influences were male teachers and coaches. And so I think I just gravitated towards that. And I just always knew in some fashion I was going to be coaching. I didn't know if I was going to be teaching or writing. Background in English and history, undergrad. But I just thought there's no better way to do it full time. And so I didn't want to teach and coach. Honestly, I wanted to just coach all day. And so, and I wanted to coach at the level that I competed at. And that started the journey. I was out of college for a year, working in Seattle, trying to kind of figure out what I was going to do with my life. And then it just dawned on me, this is what I wanted. And then I had an opportunity with a guy named Tom Ronig, who coached at University of Montana and recruited me in high school when he was at Montana State. One of my former teammates at Portland had transferred there, and I was thinking about doing my master's in MFA, creative writing, and Montana is a great program. And so I went over there just kind of poking around, thinking about the MFA program, but I think really in my heart, I was trying to find a way to in the business. And Tom gave me that opportunity, and that was my start in 1999.
Okay. Now, with being a multi-sport athlete, you said eventually track kind of, you saw the writing on the wall. Was that just a level of talent in both sports, or did you get phased out because of height, or are you you got the height to you?
Well, I ran I ran untrained as an 8th grader, around 449 in the 1600, and then 434 as a freshman in high school.
Okay.
1600 with very little training. And I was the first freshman finisher in the state meet in Washington in cross country. And, I was slight. And so, basketball wise, I gained a lot of skill early on, just playing all day, all the time. But as I got further on, the physical part of it was probably a limitation to play at the Division I level. I didn't have a quick first step. I wasn't explosive. I was skilled, but I wasn't a great athlete. I was a good athlete, not a great athlete. And I think when I got into high school, if I wanted to play basketball at the next level, I probably had to work on becoming a better athlete. But I was running more, and the reality was probably running was limiting my overall athleticism in terms of explosiveness. And I was ended up being one of the best runners in the state of Washington, and I was just like I said, a good basketball player on a great team. And I just wasn't being recruited as much, and I kind of got tired of basketball a little bit too towards the end there, and felt passionate about running. And so, I think one just overtook the other at one point, and I kind of just knew that was where my future was.
Okay. And you mentioned some pretty stellar times as an 8th grader and a 9th grader. You mentioned when we jumped on, friends with Dave Smith, he was on last week. He ran 4:09 in high school. Did you come close to that? Did you surpass that?
I ran 4:13 in high school.
Okay.
And that was coming off the basketball court. So I was, Dave's a few years ahead of me, but I knew his name was, if you look at the state meet results, I knew who Dave Smith was. He went to, I think, Tumwater High School, down in Olympia area. And Rob Connor's down from that way too, from Lacey. So, there's a bunch of us that are in college coaching that are kind of in the Seattle area, Pat Tyson's from Tacoma, and Greg Metcalf's from Washington. He's now out of the business, but he's a long time in the business. He's from Ephrata, on the east side. And so, and there's a few others, but there's a group of us that are kind of Seattle area guys.
Nice.
So,
Coach, are you still a basketball fan?
huge basketball fan. And you have to be so in here, we work every day in one of the cathedrals of the sport in Hinkle Fieldhouse. So, huge sports fan overall, and huge basketball fan for sure. Yeah.
So besides Butler, who do you root for? NBA, college?
Well, sadly, I don't root for Oklahoma City because I'm a Sonics guy. So I feel jilted.
Wow.
So I would say, I root for Butler probably more than anybody else. I root for coaches that I like and programs that I respect, probably more than anything. And then outside of that, I'm, like football, I'm a big Washington Huskies fan. So, and NFL here, Seahawks fan. And then, my second team, my wife's from Minnesota. So I'm, for the Colts, and then the Vikings are kind of my 2 and 3, I guess. So,
Coach, it's funny you mentioned OKC. At 5'4", I was never really much of a basketball person or a basketball fan, but I did have the opportunity to live in Oklahoma City to train at the Olympic Training Center there for a few years. And that's when I kind of got into the NBA and following OKC. And there's a really good book. The title escapes me right now, but it's all about it parallels like Oklahoma becoming a city back in the land run in the 1800s up to present day, and it parallels with bringing the Thunder from Seattle. So I was kind of, from the people in the town, I kind of got the backstory of how that whole deal went down, and how the people of Seattle kind of maybe got hoodwinked a little bit in how they ended up bringing the team to Oklahoma City. So it's an interesting story.
well, they're great fans there, and they were committed to a great facility, and they're passionate. I think one of the challenges when you're from places that have a lot to do, I coached in California, lived in Southern California, and just in the Northwest, there's just lots of things to do and lots of interests. And those fans sometimes can be fickle, and, facilities, and building new arenas and things like that. And, I respect people in Oklahoma City because they're all in, and you can tell that fan base is all in. So, it's just tough for me because I was a diehard Sonics fan growing up. So,
No doubt.
Coach, you mentioned you coached at Long Beach State. You also coached at Western Illinois, and you also coached at Manhattan.
Montana.
Sorry, I'm dyslexic. Everything's backwards. Our fans will get a chuckle out of that. But you coached at Montana. What did you learn from those 3 stops that you took with you into your coaching at Butler?
Oh, that's a great question. I was influenced by Rob and what we did at Portland and mentality at Portland, which I think really helped shape, taking the job at Butler, very similar schools. At Montana, I was working under Tom, and I was really trying to gain a huge grasp of what other people did. I felt like we trained really hard at Portland, and Tom's approach was a little bit more conservative, and I took some things from that I thought were positive. But really, I think where I really got my feet wet was when I got my own group, and at Western Illinois. And that's what I really wanted. I wanted to test out what I thought I knew and, make an imprint. And I was really lucky there. I mean, it was a program that didn't have a lot of resources, but it was Division I. And I can remember, talk about starting coaching. I can remember when I drove out there. Macomb, Illinois is really in the middle of nowhere. And I dropped my best friend off in Chicago, who helped me move out there. And driving from Chicago to Macomb through the rural areas of Illinois, and how excited I was just to this was it. This is my turn, and I learned a lot by trial and error, I guess, in that regard, but we had the #1 conference turnaround in the country at Western Illinois. And it was really with kids that needed a little bit more structure, and needed a better plan. And so I think I learned a lot through just what I believed in, and then testing it, and then writing it down and seeing if it worked, and kind of developing my own philosophy, right? I had an idea, and then it was a little bit of, to a degree, guess and check. And that was really influential for me. And my boss, Mike Stevenson, just gave me free reign. So I felt really fortunate there. But I really learned that, I guess, at Long Beach State later, we had a great turnaround there too. It was you got to recruit really hard. That's one thing I learned early is and being in places that were maybe not on the map, you had to hustle. And Rob told me that when I got into business, you better hustle and keep recruiting. And you recruit every day. And I think when you learn that, I think you take that into you're recruiting your own student athletes to a degree too. You're trying to get them to buy in and believe. And so a lot of lessons were learned just through, small trials and error. But recruiting at a high level, being ambitious, coming to practice with passion, having a plan, and then really trying to fit the training around where people were at. That was one of the things that you were learning through trial and error. It's hey, you want to do this, but this is where they're at. And so one of my favorite sayings in coaching is coach them where they're at. And that's a lesson young coaches need to learn, and not where they want them to be, but where they're at, and trying to understand where they're at. And I learned a lot about that because I was super ambitious and I wanted big results quickly. And I learned that you got to coach them where they're at, both psychologically and physiologically.
What was the goal when you took over the program at Butler, and have you reached those goals?
Well, it was really interesting because when I got here, Joe Franklin was here before I was, and I'd never coached an international athlete, never recruited an international athlete. And I knew right away, I was anxious when I got here because I knew this was kind of a cottage industry, at the time, at least. It's a little different now, but they kind of they and about 7 or 8 other programs kind of had a corner on the market on kind of grad students from the UK and things like that. And I realized right away that I had to turn towards the skid, so to speak. I had to do what they were doing, or we were going to sink immediately. But my goal and my ambition long-term was I wanted to recruit the Midwest. I wanted to develop kids the way that I felt like we'd done really well at Long Beach and Western Illinois. And I wanted to be the best developmental program in the country. And we feel like if you look at the numbers, and there's some subjectivity to that, but if you look at the numbers of where people start and where they finish, we will compare ourselves with anybody in the country at the Division I level in terms of development. And that was a big sales pitch to kids to try to get them here. You're going to run faster if you run in our uniform, and you're going to have a great experience, and you're going to finish on a high note. And that's a tall ask, but that was something that I was committed to. And along the way, we've been able to get, American kids and develop American kids and still keep that international connection alive. But I kind of knew early on that connection really was really moving away from that and really dying. I think, in the early 2000s and before, without the internet or, being prevalent, people just, hey, my buddy from Ireland ran really well, and I'm going to get my buddy to come. It was a lot of buddy system. And you'd had pipelines, and now those pipelines have been largely burst, and I saw that coming. So I got in and was able to kind of piggyback a little bit what Joe had done, but I really wanted to move in a direction where we could do that, but we could really develop Americans. And so that was one of the things that, the backlash when I got here is like, you only have foreign kids, they're 23 years old, da, 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 da. And largely that was the case before I was here. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se, if they're of the right age. And that's another subject matter, right? But if they're college age athletes and they're in college and, what have you. But I wanted to show that we could be a diverse program and be a track program too, which we didn't really have. And really maximize our resources and be great at developing people, greater than athletes, but being great athletes along the way with that. And, there's an old poster that I think about a lot. There's an old Nike poster in the 1980s. They had some really cool ones, if you remember those. And there's one that we had at Portland and in that locker room, and it was, there's no finish line. That was the saying at the bottom. And that's the way that I kind of look at what we do is there's no finish line. There's no mountaintop. Because if you feel like you've done that, you're probably letting the people down that are coming up next along the way, because it's not their mountaintop. And so you're really trying to help each athlete get to whatever their mountaintop is. And one thing I'm really proud of is we coach everybody here. We coach everybody. And I don't believe at the elite Division I level, everyone's really being coached, if I'm being frank. And we are committed to every single kid. And we coach every kid, and we want them to see what is great for them, if that makes sense. Because it's different. We all have different ability levels.
Yeah. How do you think you're able to coach every kid at that and compete at such a high level?
Well, I think one of the hardest things for me, and I'm not going to say it's every night, that would probably be hyperbole, but like every day that you go home, you drive home, you're thinking about somebody who didn't get enough attention. So there's a reality to it that there's probably somebody wanting your attention or needing your attention at the time. I think that's one of the hardest things for me about coaching is the feeling that you might be letting somebody down at any point or not giving them everything. And that's a heavy burden, because then you come home and you've got a family, So I think the short answer is you're probably not giving everybody everything all the time. But you try. And I think one thing that I've done over time to try to help with that is, and this is an influence from a book that's really important to me called Atomic Habits, which I'm sure you guys know about. But we talk a lot about in our program about systems over motivation. And so we really want to put good systems in place for people to be successful, so they don't necessarily need their hand held all the time, or they don't need the coach to tell them to do X or Y. And we really think about how we prepare and how the things that we say. I try not to waste words. I try to make everything that we do meaningful so that we can execute it. And then you try to fill in the blanks with personal relationships and meetings with people and things like that. But there's a reality to it, which is we're going to coach everybody, but at the same time, you drive home at night, you know that there's somebody that needs you. And you just try to circle back to that person if you see something, But if you have good systems in place, you can solve a lot of problems along the way with a good infrastructure and a good process, as it were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, you mentioned beginning, like this is a masterclass for us, and you've already dropped quite a few nuggets on me here as a high school cross country coach. All the stuff that you just said right now is, super important, driving home and at least now I'm going to be thinking like making sure everyone gets a little bit more attention. Um, it's yeah, I mean, every day I feel like I'm learning something new and being able to help, and in South Carolina, we have seventh and eighth graders as well too that can run varsity. So I'm used to just coaching high school kids, but now I've got some seventh and eighth graders. That's a whole other can of worms that I'm dealing with and learning how to manage those and manage expectations, meeting people where they're at as opposed to where you want them to be. So I appreciate you sharing that stuff with me. I'm going to make some notes on this right away and start implementing it tomorrow with some of the youngsters and trying to meet them more where they're at, not where I want them to be. So thank you. You're talking about that development. And I think a lot of times when people think about the Big East, they think about Villanova, they think about Georgetown. But you guys have won 4 of the last 6 Big East Conference championships. How much of that is, I mean, obviously there's been some pretty solid development over the past couple of years with some guys and gals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a hill to climb. When we went into the Big East, I went into my when we'd coming off winning the A10, we were there for just a year, so just a cup of coffee there, and surprisingly, we really had the upper hand on other programs. So we were winning big, but we had an advantage, to be fair. And A10 was probably equal to other programs, and we were dominant in the year there we were there. But when we arrived in the Big East, I went into my sport administrator's office and said, "Hey, listen, we may never win anything. That's just our reality." And of course, you're kind of wanting somebody to push back and say, "No, like, we'll find a way. What do you need?" And they're like, "Okay." It's okay. And I was like, "Oh, that's not what I wanted to hear." I wanted to see my own blood a little bit, and it was tough because, like, for example, like Georgetown, that was one of my recruiting visits in high school. And I got to see it, I got to sit in Gag's office and talk to Gags and, think about running for Georgetown and what that would be like and what an incredible school it is, and location and the history. And if you think Georgetown has a great history, then you need to look at Villanova, right? Even stronger, right? And Providence has got a great history too. And so it was a little scary going in there trying to win. And so we were playing the role of, giant killers, and it took time. But I'm a big believer in you coach, like we were talking about with the athletes, coach them where they're at. The way that we've won, I would say, or been successful, however you want to see it, is we're not looking at the competition too much. We're looking at what can we do right now to make the best decision on our behalf to leverage our situation to get a little bit better. And then as we did that, we started to close the gap. And, because honestly, on paper, I would say those schools have higher ceilings than we do. They're national universities. They have a better history. They have more scholarships. They have more. But we have the things that we need, we feel like. We have some great things here too. So we're not without, for sure. We have the things we need to be an elite program. But we don't have the shine that some other programs have. And Butler's a fantastic school. It's a regional institution, and that hurts us in recruiting sometimes against national universities with elite students, and most distance runners are elite students. But we're the number 1 school in our region, ranked for the last 7 years. And we have a 98% placement rate of all our grads within 6 months of graduation. We have a great network. We have we're in a really good area of Indy. We have great places to train. So we have things too, but it's tough going against national universities. And so you have to get, quote unquote, at least at the jump, a lesser athlete. Maybe you go internationally and maybe you can narrow that gap. But our foundation, at least right now, we're about 80-20, domestic to international. You got to find transfers. You got to work a lot of angles. You got to be active in the transfer portal. You got to be able to find diamonds. You got to be really, really resourceful to beat those programs. But once you get there and you build it, then you can keep leveraging it. And we just constant gardening, constant leveraging the program, constant development of each person, developing a culture, and getting people to believe that you can win. And once you do that, you got some momentum, but you just can't stop. And I would say that for most programs, but if we're a true mid-major, I look at those schools as national universities. We're a mid-major. We're in the same conference, but we're not the same. And you have to realize that every day that you get up, because if you let your foot off the gas, you will never win in this league. And those programs, when we go to the conference meet, no matter, we've been really strong. Like we won by a margin this year. They don't care. It doesn't matter who's in those uniforms. They're not scared. And it's like history. They just have that history in those programs. And so their athletes are always believing that they can beat you, even if you have the upper hand. And that's what I love about the Big East.
Coach, when you're talking about, transfer portal, development, finding those diamonds in the rough, what are some of the things you're looking at specifically when it comes to finding a diamond in the rough?
Well, I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but I would say mentality is really important. Obviously, the connection with the athlete is really important. Can we coach this person hard? And we coach people hard here. Can we coach them hard? Can we be demanding of them? Are they demanding of themselves? So character, character sells, and that seems so straightforward, but it cannot be undersold. From a training standpoint, what's their ceiling? Like, if we're going to be competitive, we have to be great at speculating what somebody can do long term. And I will take somebody with lesser PRs if I think they have a high ceiling. And I think that's getting harder and harder for programs as rosters are getting smaller. But I'm staunch in my belief. If I think somebody can be great and no one else does, I'm not with the crowd. I don't care. I believe in what I see, and I will stick to that. And some of that, is how do they move? We really try to get as much film tape on people. I'm really big into biomechanics and movement patterns. We do a lot of stuff here with that. We have a great network of medical people around us. We do some pro level stuff here. That's an equalizer if we get somebody who's quote unquote a lesser athlete or has less training under them or weaker PRs. I look for multi-sport athletes. I look for people who are new to the sport. I look for people who are new and so they don't have a lot of opinions. Yeah. And they're like, I'm down for whatever. Great, sweet. I'm going to coach you then, right? So here's a kid that I wouldn't want. Super, super high mileage, bad biomechanics, not good foot speed, not bouncy, has run really fast based upon their ability and thinks they're going to be Olympian. That's a kid I don't want. I want a kid who's like just fresh off the soccer field or something like that. He's got good mechanics, has got good basic foot speed, and has a high aerobic potential.
Yeah.
And if they have that, we can fill in the rest, especially if they're a competitor. So I've had a lot of kids that, I don't know. I mean, I could give you some examples, but like kids like became like pros and they were not good, in high school, but I watched them run. I'm like, that kid's got something. Now, did I know they were going to be that great? No, that's the fun part, but they've got something special and you just follow the thread. And then as you do that, you get hopefully a higher level of athlete that's maybe a little bit more proven, but still has the same attributes. And that's kind of where we're at now, is they're not unknowns anymore. More so on the women's side, there's a few. We've got a few people coming in that people haven't heard of. And I'm like, this girl's going to be a legit, you know what I mean? But it's going to be delayed gratification. The athletes that run really well for me, it's in their, like, say All-American or whatever, it's in their second, third, fourth year. Mm-hmm. We don't get blue chip kids that are going to be legit as freshmen typically, but honestly, you don't see that in the NCAA anymore, unless it's like Nico Young or somebody like that. And that kid's not, that level of athlete's not going to call us back. So,
yeah. Coach, I'm curious, from a character perspective, you doing those home visits, or you checking out the bedroom to see if the bed's made and those sorts of things?
I've done some in-home visits on some athletes that other people didn't, and that was like I was really convinced, but other people weren't as. I mean, Jesse Hamlin's a great example. I just ran 7:39. I was one of two people to do an in-home visit with him. And I was like, this kid's going to be amazing. 25 miles a week. He's a year younger than his classmates. He could classify a year younger. He's at a high school program that has no success. I like a kid who's a school record holder because that means their school wasn't very good. You know what I mean? Potentially, unless they're elite. And that means they're the first one through the door. I love that, right? I don't want somebody who's a long lineage of high volume training. You know, that's not what we want, you know? And so, you just have sometimes you just have a sense, but watching them move, and watching how they move and operate around other people, and are they good teammate, you know, those things are paramount here because we have a high demand for people to be a great teammate here. And it's not negotiable. So,
Coach, there were a couple things that you said that the light bulb went off in my head. I was like, oh, I got to mark that. So I go back and ask them. You mentioned, you know, you like a kid with lower miles, maybe coming off the soccer field. Are you looking for those multi-sport athletes?
100%, 100%. I like it for a couple of reasons. One, running is very singular in a couple ways. One, linear, right? And so you've got a lot of people running just in a linear fashion when they're in adolescence. I want somebody who's can move side to side, who's got good hip strength and movement, and their movement patterns are good. Movement patterns are really important. They have some level of athleticism, and have they submitted themselves to the team, right? Somebody who's running junior Olympics when they're 12 and their dad's training them, you know what I mean? That's not my kid, right? That's not my kid. But somebody who's on a team and they're like, yeah, I played until my junior year, but I just kind of decided I wanted to run in college, but I really miss basketball or I really miss soccer or something like that, you know. They have a toughness in them, an inherent toughness in them, and a will to help other people. And they're not as self-involved. So that goes a long way. And they just really like being in a training environment that's special, you know. So multi-sport for sure. And that's getting harder and harder with the way club sports are. My son's 11. He's in club sports. You know, you are in the system, so it is what it is. But I love free play. And it sickens me what youth sports are now and the people around it. And I feel blessed that I came up in really beginning in the AAU. So I didn't really get that too much. I played some summer league basketball, but I was able to just be an athlete in a couple different sports and then find running on my own. So I didn't burn out, you know. And I worry about that for kids.
Coach Roe, you got to chuckle at Rich and I because we might have been multi-sport athletes, but we were definitely those junior Olympic kids, and our dad was on the track yelling our splits at us for practice.
Well,
so you got to chuckle out of us because we know that kid you're talking about.
You know, the kid that you're probably going against with that is dad's overly involved, and the kid's running 50 miles a week when he's 12 or something. You know what I mean, like that. And I feel for those kids because it just sucks the life out of, you know, down the road. I wish the sport could continue whenever, but like, you know, that to whenever, but we can take them to 22 or 23 if they're an 18-year-old. And I really want people to end well. And I want them to, you know, and if we're our best people, we want them to keep going or have a chance. But we have such a finite amount of time to be an athlete, you know, and you can be athletic and run road races and you can do other things. And running's a lifelong sport, of course. But just like wrestling, like, you know, there's not a lot of people wrestling past college if they get a chance to wrestle in college. And it's such a beautiful sport that you want to extend that as much as you can to see what people can do, but just to continue to gain that experience and how it informs the rest of your life.
You spoke of the high academic standard at Butler, and the team is known for that high GPA. How do you balance the academics and competing at the top level?
Well, we're really lucky that I think one of the things I love most about coaching at Butler is if there's a continuum in Division I athletics between what I would call the sport factory and not to throw anybody under the bus, but let's just say the Ivy League, right? You know, and that's the continuum. Butler is like past halfway towards the Ivy League, but kind of like 2/3, you know what I mean? And the Ivy League is a really tough place for people to be successful as athletes because the demands on them academically and socially and things like that on one end, or national universities, maybe not to pick on the Ivy League, but national universities, right? And we see that when we have transfers from those places. The other side of it is the sport factory, where it's like, oh, the coach is like, you don't want to major in that, and like all our athletes do this, and they're all sequestered and they don't really have a rich experience in my estimation, or it can be that way at least. At Butler, you can have other things to do on campus. Now, you can't do 30 other clubs or things because the running part is significant and the academics is significant. But we really want people to have some level of balance. And I think the rigor at Butler is demanding, but it's reasonable. It's going to prepare people for graduate school. It's going to prepare people professionally, but they can balance it. And I think that's kind of a secret weapon for us, I think, is we get intelligent people who are academically minded, but there isn't an overconsumption on the academic side, and there isn't just, I came here to run and I don't care about school on the flip side of that. And I really love the balance of that, and I really love how we're supported in that way, and the type of people that choose this school, because we talk about that in the recruiting process, and that's a positive with a lot of people in recruiting when they choose to come here.
Coach, you mentioned that 98% hiring 6 months after graduation. I'm assuming there's some pretty good being in Indianapolis, there's some pretty good internships along the way when those young men and women get to be, juniors, seniors.
Yeah,
maybe even before that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. They're not just getting jobs. Oftentimes, to be transparent, is those are jobs out from their internship, like in their internship or something that's related. And so, a lot of people are going on to graduate school too, of course, but like, this is a tough economy, and to have it an academic pathway that in virtually every major has an internship component is really important. I think it's real world experience, but it's also a connection to people who are going to hire you, honestly. And you may not stay in that space, but it gives you a platform and something to put on your CV and connections. And so it's fantastic undergraduate education here. That is a big part of it. And I think, Indianapolis is a great city for that. There's a lot of possibility there. And so we're not in a small college town where, there may be less connections there or job opportunities. And so that's something that I think is really a feather kind of in our cap.
And from a academic perspective, are there any unique majors at Butler that you might not see at some of the other schools, or are there any commonalities amongst your athletes where they're kind of funneling into similar majors?
We have a lot of people in business that we have pre-med is, bio. Probably our strongest major is pharmacy. And there's not a lot of pharmacy programs out there. We have 100% placement rate in pharmacy over the last 10 years, pass rate, the test. It's what's called a non-competitive program, which means they kind of hold your hand all the way through it. It's not a weed out. There's no weed out courses here. You get into school and people are going to help you. Pharmacy's big. Physician's assistant is pretty significant. Given healthcare now, the PA is a really good pathway for a lot of people. We have a good media major. That's a little bit unique. Not everybody has that. But I would say those are the major ones. We've revamped our kinesiology program, and it's more active and engaged. It's less of a kind of like a teaching tract. It's more like lab and research, and that one is very popular right now. And we have some people in that are having a great experience.
What's undergrad population?
5,000, just under.
Cool.
Coach, we are in the heat of indoor right now. I believe you have a gentleman that qualified for the NCAAs. How has indoor gone, and what should we expect at the NCAA championship?
Yeah, we're fortunate. Jesse Hamlin, he's an older athlete. He's 24, but been here the whole time. Medical redshirt. He had missed 2 seasons with stress fractures and separately, and then he came in right at COVID, so he kind of got the benefit, if you can see it that way. We didn't get the benefit of coaching him in a year, but in terms of time, he's headed to NCAAs, and this will be his last race in a Butler uniform. So we're really excited for him, and he's in good form, and so we think he's going to be very competitive. He's scored in 2 NCAA finals previously. He was 7th in the indoor 3,000 in 23, and then he was 8th 2 years ago in the outdoor 5,000, which was, I think, the best 5,000 in NCAA history. Had 5 NCAA championships in that field, and he was 8th. So he's pretty experienced, and he had a great meet, obviously, this weekend, and made history winning the 5,000, the mile, and anchoring a 4x8. Nobody had done that in Big East history before. He's high point scorer in the conference there. I thought we did well. We were 3rd as a team. We're a small team. We don't sponsor every event, but we are very much committed to maximizing points of the conference meet. Absent of somebody who might be going to nationals or something like that, we sometimes we'll have them race less. And so saying that it was Jesse's idea to do these events, not me. I wanted him to run one less event, but he convinced me, and it worked out. But 3rd there, and then on our women's side, we're really kind of retooling and rebuilding. This year we've got 9 girls coming in. We've got a good young nucleus. I think come see me in 2 to 3 years. I think our women are going to be really good again, but it's a little bit more cyclical on the women's side because we actually have less money on the women's side than the men. We're upside down in Title IX at Butler. And so their pathway is even more difficult than the men. So we're very, very heavy on the speculation and finding diamonds there. And that just takes a little bit more time. But we had a great indoor season. We had another athlete not too far away from making nationals. He ran 13:33. William Zagarsky, he's a 2-time All-American. Both those guys, Jesse and Will, are from 2 hours from campus, just in different directions. So they're, fairly local to us. 2 Midwest guys that have developed into the best guys in the NCAA. And Will be hopefully ready to make it back to the NCAA championships in the 10,000 this year. We hope, we've won 6 straight titles in the 10,000, the Big East championships, and we're one of only 4 schools in the country to make 5 straight 10K finals at NCAAs. The other 3 being, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and Arkansas. So those schools all look more similar to each other than they look to us. So that's something that we have a lot of pride in, is running well at 10,000 meters and being very tough at the conference level there and the national level. And that will be a focus come outdoor as well.
That was kind of a Portland thing too, wasn't it?
Portland, 10,000 meters,
yeah.
100%. Yeah. And if you talk to Rob, if you asked Rob, I ran my first 10 my senior year. He would have said that I started too late, and he'd be right. So, yeah, Portland has a great tradition in 10,000, in that 10,000 cross space. Obviously, a lot of great moments there.
Yeah.
Coach, you mentioned the rebuilding for the ladies program, and like Rich said at the beginning of the show, the ladies back in 2013 got 3rd in cross country. What's it like for you? You've been at Butler since 2007 to kind of ride those waves of the programs, peaking and then rebuilding. How do you handle that as a coach?
I think that's one of the things I'm probably had take the most personal pride in. Is the reality is both sides, I would say, but we've kind of built up a depth on the men's side where I think we've got a little bit more space to stay at a higher elevation on the mountain, so to speak. But the women, it's really hard. And programs like ours are just probably not set up to be nationally relevant, if we're being transparent. And so it is really about delayed gratification and long-term build. And typically on the women's side, when we have a really, really big year, it means a rebuild is on the way because they're older athletes. Like our last women's team that made the national championships in 21, really kind of what I would call a worker bee group, like tough girls that were just trained at a high level and were really connected with each other. You make the national meet and you only have one girl who breaks 11 minutes under 2 miles. I don't think there's any programs in the country that have done that in the last 7 years other than us. And I don't know if that can be done again if you look at the landscape now. And so that 2013 team was a 5-year build and they were older. And, our number one girl on that team didn't run cross country in high school. She played soccer and was a 5-minute miler. 5 minutes, Amara Olson, she was 5 flat, 11:04 in high school, playing soccer, never run cross country. And, by the time she graduated, she was 6-time All-American, 13th fastest woman in the country in the 3K in 2013. From 5 flat, and so you look at the 21 team had Angelina Ellis on it, who ran 5:16 in the mile in high school and 2:16. And by the time she graduated, she was a 9:44 steepler, 4:37, 9:04 from 5:16 and like 78th at the state meet and cross. And now is a pro, and Olympic trials finalist and U.S. finalist. That 2013 team had 4 All-Americans on them, and they were all 3-star recruits at best, right? But it's time. Time is our greatest ally. If we have time and we have the right people, we're going to be competitive. And so we need time on the women's side to be competitive again. We have 9 girls coming in, and I think if we manage them the right way, we can be very competitive in 2 to 3 years. But they're not anybody's heard of. And that's a little bit different than the men's side right now, where it's like, if you look at our recruiting class right now, like we signed Australian national champion in cross country. And, we signed a Canadian national record holder in the 600 and national champion in the 800, who was ranked 21st in the world last year under 18. Those are different level recruits that we're finally breaking through and getting. But the women's side, I think it's just harder. There's more money out there. There's more teams that are more dominant. And so you just have to play your own chessboard. And you have to not worry about anyone else, manage your personnel the best way possible, create a good culture. And if you can find diamonds, there's the Mara Olsons in that. There are the Angelina Ellis is in there. Olivia Pratt was on that team in 13 that had a long professional career and was only ran 5:02 in high school, and she ended up being a really good pro. And Kirsty Legg, who was under the radar, and became an All-American. So I think there's more room on the women's side to find diamonds, and you have to do that because it's so top heavy. I guess that's the reality. I don't know. That was a long-winded answer, but hopefully that was helpful.
Rich, play your own chessboard. We always talk about T-shirts. Put that on a T-shirt.
No doubt. Coach, you talk about the development, that long game, and as a coach, you've had the results, so you can believe in it and you can see it and it, and you have the stories to tell it. But sometimes as young kids, it's maybe harder to see the forest through the trees. How do you keep them bought in, like even maybe as freshmen, maybe going to Big East and taking their lumps a little bit, but knowing that you've got the diamonds in the rough and like, hey, just keep showing up, keep doing the work. Are you playing a little bit of psychologist as well as coach in those moments, with the younger girls?
Yeah, definitely the master's degree in sports psychology comes in handy for sure. I think you can point to other people's successes and what have you. That helps. And like, hey, this is where this person was at. You can do a little bit of that. But I'm very staunch in like saying to somebody, hey, I like where you're at right now. I don't care about the results. Okay. And we can work on those things, but if you keep doing these things, and so we really focus on the things that we can control and being passionate about the things we can control and having a great process and trusting that. And yeah, that can be a challenge when somebody's really motivated to get results, right? And so ways that we can impact that is we don't talk about times much in our program, and we know they matter, and we know PRs matter or whatever, but I think that can be the language of the devil. We talk about, are you competitive? How did you compete? We talk about when they race, the decisions they made in races, and hey, this was a really good decision. If somebody's struggling or they're developing or whatever, I'm going to find things in competition or in training that they're doing well, and I'm going to highlight them while I tell them very directly about the things they're not doing well. And I do not beat around the bush about it. Hey, this wasn't very good. You need to work on this, but this is what we're going to do. However, I see all these good things too. So let's keep with these good things. Now let's narrow the margins on the things that we're not doing as well as we like. Let's get excited about the process to make those things better. Okay. And, that's eating, and we talk about, like, hey, man, you got to eat your vegetables. So we're eating our vegetables right now, whether it's like doing long threshold work for a younger athlete, their first time, like, hey, and I think the coaching days, certainly in workouts, for me are the most important times, not before the meet necessarily or after the meet. I call it the Rocky Four, like kids don't even get that now, but I'm like, hey, I'm not giving you the Rocky Four right now. Okay. And I might give them the Rocky Four, but like I'm going to give you the things that you need to be successful. And I'm going to tell you on Tuesday, because I'm going to let that get in your blood. We need to coach them and teach them where it can get into their bloodstream, where they can self-actualize that, where they can put into the race. So if I see a coach, you see this in high school a lot. I see a coach really trying to fire somebody up before a race or something like that. Now there's times where that can be helpful or whatever, but generally speaking, that's bad coaching, because we think about arousal levels and what people can take in, and the closer they get to the competition, the less they can take in. So we want to focus on cues right before a race, reminders. But if you haven't done that beforehand as a coach, that's a you problem. That's not your athlete's problem. And you are culpable to that. So we have to really be present in the difficult moments in coaching, and when they're under stress, and that's typically 4 or 5 days out where they're doing a hard workout. Hey, remember when we're doing this in a race? It's practice. When we're doing this in a race, this is what this means, and this is why we're doing this. Okay, you're going to be ready because you did that really well. Okay, and they're like, yeah, you get that? And I'm like, hey, this is a safe place to fail. So let's be aggressive here, or let's make mistakes here. Let's go break things. We say sometimes, especially with middle distance runners. How quick is this? And sometimes we want them to pace it and run at X, and I'm like, hey, go break things. So we talk a lot about when we get to a race, we don't care. You can get it wrong. Don't worry about it. Just trust what your instincts. If your instincts are wrong, we'll go correct it later. But we're not going to overthink it. We're going to go smash things. Leading up to that, every single day, it's like, how much sleep are you getting? Did you do your ancillary work? And we get really process oriented. But when we get to the race, go break things. And I try to teach everybody, or have it in our program at least, is like, and this is really important on the women's side, I think. It's like, I talk about the word arrogant. I want you to be arrogant. What? No one ever said I can be arrogant and whatever. I want you to be selfish, and I want you to be arrogant when you compete. And I want you to break things, and you don't give a shit, right? And I want people to feel that way. I don't care if they're in section 6 of 6. I don't care. Go break things. Go beat people. Go compete. Go have fun. Then we'll get technical the rest of the week. So on Tuesday, we want to run it hard, let's say. We want that same mentality because that's the carryover. Now on Wednesday, we might be like, hey, how's your ankle mobility? Did you work on your big toe? Your big toe flexion is not very good. Remember how you got hurt with your calf? That sole is a little tight. Did you see the trainer? So we try to juxtapose those things of, how we develop and the little things we need to do that are important. But then we want to divorce ourselves from that when we go compete, and we just want to go grip it and rip it. And I really try to empower people to do it that way. And we measure people in the program on how tough they are and how hard they compete, because everybody's got a different ability level. We don't care. And so sometimes we'll say like, hey, who's the best person in the program? No, not the fastest person. Who's the best competitor? And everybody's trying to be the best competitor they can be, right? And when people compete at a hard, way and they execute at a high level, we recognize it. And we honor that, because that's when people are getting the most out of themselves. And that's when they're feeling the best about who they are, and they're locked into the moment, getting in a flow state, having great concentration. Those things matter. And those are the things that people can take with them the rest of their lives. There has so much value in beyond, oh, I ran X time. Times are going to change. We know that. You look at what shoes do now and whatever, they're all different. You know what I mean? But toughness can never be taken away from you. And the feeling you have with that is transferable for the rest of your life.
Man, Coach, you got me fired up.
Yeah, I want to go break things right now, Rich.
Smash it. Grip it and rip it. We say that all the time.
Yeah, good.
Rich, you want to get in the Final Four? You got anything else for Coach?
I just got one more, Coach. You can just say yay or nay on all these things in terms of where the Bulldogs stand on them. You don't have to get too in depth. We want to get you out of here. Be respectful of your time. Double threshold.
We don't do it, but there's value in it, particularly for middle distance. I think most college programs are getting it wrong.
Okay. Super shoes.
Sign of the times.
In training?
Yes. In training, we try to minimize it in the off season, but it is highly impactful for recovery as much as anything, particularly for threshold work and long tempo work. And it has raised the level in how people can train. However, I caution people, or at least our people, do your footwork and keep your feet strong and keep that big toe flexing, because it isolates that and it makes your feet weaker and less responsive. So you have to do the ancillary work around it, particularly if you're in it a lot. Okay.
And the last one, bicarb.
Sign of the times. 800s are super quick now, and I think bicarb. You look at the NCAA, people are doing it. I don't know the long term on it like anyone else, but if you're not doing it and you're not in super shoes, you're getting beat.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Coach, I just want to comment, speaking biomechanics, keeping that big toe mobile, you're speaking our language over here. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate you doing that stuff with your athletes.
Yeah. Well, we have a great network around us. Jacob Crow, Tempo Sports Rehab, Scott Hudson, some of the best minds in the business are here in Indianapolis. And a lot of our success comes down to our relationship with them and a monastic commitment to keeping people healthy and being committed to the total athlete.
So, Coach, you said you're from Seattle. Are you a coffee drinker?
I've become one because I have 2 kids.
All right.
Okay. So, yeah.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
I'm soft. My wife brews the coffee, but I drink it cold in the can, unfortunately. Right. One a day at 2:00. So to get me through.
Do you have a brand of choice?
That La Combre or La Combre? Yeah. I'll drink one of those a day.
All right. So, have you ever done a nitro cold brew from Starbucks?
I haven't. I'm not. I'll probably, if I'm at Starbucks, I'm soft. Self-admittedly, I'll probably have a latte or something like that, or macchiato.
Their nitro cold brew is smooth.
Is it?
It's like the smoothest out there, and we're coffee snobs, and it pains me to admit that, but it's pretty smooth. Just be careful with the caffeine content.
Okay, good to know. Yeah.
Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Matt Roe?
I work out a ton. I work out every day. So lift, run, bike. Central to my day, every single day is working out. I work out every single day. So, yeah.
Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
What am I reading? Yes, I try to have one book ready at all times. I read a lot of fiction as an English major, so I'm strictly nonfiction. I go off the best list of each year, and I go through that multiple publications, and I find the things that I like the most. what I've just finished. I just finished a book on the it's called the CIA, I think CIA files. It's how the CIA in the United States helped Poland liberate themselves through literature during the fall, right before the fall of communism. It's a really, really good book. And then I'm on to 1929 right now, which is about the fall of the crash of the banks in 1929. That was a book that I've started recently. And then I just finished the kind of autobiography of REM. That was the book previous, I think, in the last month or so. And then another book on how reality television has shaped us called Cue the Sun. I think those were the books that I most recently read.
What are you listening to music-wise these days? You still getting down with the grunge scene in Seattle?
I'm still down with that. That's a big thing for me. My brother lives in Seattle, and he's a certified audiophile, I would say. I have a vast interest in music, from jazz to rock to indie, but heavily influenced by my time in growing up in Seattle. So like I was a teenager in early 90s, and so yeah, I mean like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana is huge for me. I'm a big like Chris Cornell. We go back and forth on this, but like Chris Cornell is my lead singer in my fictional supergroup. So I got Neil Peart on drums, the best drummer of all time. That's easy one. And Chris Cornell's my lead singer, and David Gilmour's my lead guitarist, and Prince is my Prince would not let anybody, but he wouldn't be rhythm guitar for anybody because he's the greatest musician of the 20th century. But he's my rhythm guitarist, and I got Michael McDonald on keys. So that's my super group, if that gives you an idea of the music I listen to. But like, yeah, I love classic rock. I love. I've got some metal and some hard rock in my diet. My favorite album of all time is Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. But most recently, strangely enough, I'm kind of into kind of indie pop, but electronic, like chill wave. I think they call it bedroom pop. I've kind of fallen into some of that stuff recently. It's just stuff that is easy when I'm working out and stuff like that. But yeah. A lot of great Seattle bands, obviously, and then post grunge. You've got like, Head and Heart and Band of Horses and Fleet Foxes and all those types of bands too, which I enjoy. Maybe not to the same level of when I was growing up listening to Pearl Jam or something like that. But yeah, there's music is central to my day too, and like, and picking quotes and things out there when I talk to the team. Like I just the other day, I'm a pretty big Radiohead fan, and I just saw this quote thinking about that tonight, is from a song called The Numbers, and it's, "The future is inside us, it's not somewhere else." And I just thought, wow, I'm going to weave that into a conversation with the team at some point. And so I'm definitely, whether it's training or motivational from people, like the books I mentioned, like, Atomic Habits and things like that. Like I'm famous for stealing stuff and trying to reconfigure it, making my own and sharing it. And so I'm really grateful for that. In terms of podcasts, I think maybe Diary of a CEO is probably the thing that I that I'm into probably the most right now, and I catch most of those ones along the way. I think is probably my number one. Or if I'm like on a plane, I might, and I need some entertainment, I might listen to like Smartless or something like that. So.
You listen to the Alex Honnold episode yet?
Which one?
Alex Honnold on the
I haven't.
Diary of CEO. I guess he scaled that building in Taipei, and I guess I think it just came out last week.
Is it the latest one?
I think so. Either the end of last week or the beginning of this week. I saw a clip or two on socials, but I haven't dove into it yet. But I'm a big fan of Alex Honnold and the death-defying feats that he's done, and it's pretty amazing to have that kind of intestinal fortitude to climb those mountains and stuff without any ropes or anything like that.
Yeah. They've got some great guests on there, and it's really varied and stuff. But yeah, I'm big into that. Shane Parrish, I pick up some stuff from him, and James Clear, Adam Grant, all those guys in that kind of leadership and space. When I get the time, I've got 2 kids, and so often when I fly is when I probably will catch up on podcasts or when I'm driving somewhere. But there's some limitations there for me with that. Sure. So I try to read every day, and that probably is maybe more reaffirming for me than podcasts, but they both have great value in my life. Yeah.
You ever get down with the Screaming Trees?
Oh yeah, Screaming Trees. They're actually from Ellensburg, which is not far. It's kind of like Central Washington and stuff like that. But yeah, Screaming Trees for sure.
Yeah, that's a
good shout.
That was a good come up at the record store recommendation for back in the day. That one of the gentlemen pointed that one out to me. I thought I was as cool as kid in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, because I had a West Coast band that no one had ever heard of before.
Yeah, they're a little bit in the background of that whole movement, but they've got some good stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Well, too, with the powers of AI, you might actually be able to generate that supergroup. You have your fantasy supergroup. I think you might be able to, a couple good prompts. You might be able to get a couple good songs out of it.
Yeah. Oh, I probably didn't mention my bassist, but it's Flea. That's so. Yeah, I just I love the Chili Peppers, and those are all bands I love. I wouldn't say he's my favorite artist of all time, but I saw Prince in concert. He was playing in Minneapolis for the first time in 10 years in musicology tour. So I'm dating myself. 2004. I was in the 6th row with my wife, who's from the cities, and it rubber stamped for me that he is the greatest musician in modern music. I wish anybody who is a music fan could see his talent. It's otherworldly. I've been seeing some great concerts in my life, and I've seen the Chili Peppers, and I've seen Hell Freezes Over with Eagles and Page and Plan and U2 and Radiohead and whatever. And Prince is on his own planet. Dude's on his own planet. And so that was really cool. But yeah, I wonder how all those people would meld together. But and same thing true. Like I saw Rush in concert in 1997 in Portland, and I'm like, I think Neil Peart's the best drummer in the world. And you went and saw him, and it's like, yeah, that's the best drummer in the world. Yeah. So I'm pretty committed to my people who I'm passionate about in as musicians. So
that's awesome. Coach, last one we got for you to close out is a lighthearted one. Maybe it's a unique food item in Indianapolis. Maybe it's something from back home out in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe it's a beverage. Maybe in your spare time, you are an avid golfer or fisherman. You mentioned you have 2 kids. Maybe one of them is a daughter. Maybe you're a closet Swiftie. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure for food?
Anything.
Yeah, I have a weak spot for baked goods for sure. So probably in particular donuts. I have a massive weakness for donuts, and so
donuts, Rich.
Yeah. Donuts are probably a weakness of mine. Maybe some AM Gold too. I guess musically, I like some of that stuff. But anything from the bakery, and we've got some good donuts in town. Like Long's is probably our most famous, but we've got some places here that have near campus. We have some really good spots. So yeah, I would say desserts are a weakness for me, in particular, probably bakery items. Illinois Street Bakery is and Cafe. That's a place down the street from us, and they've got really, really good donuts. Parlor Donuts are pretty good, and so there's a bunch of spots in there's one called Titus that's up in the suburbs, and my son plays soccer up there, and my wife will go up there and go further up and get that. They've got something that's their own unique donut too. So yeah, I would say donuts are a passion of mine, and there's some great ones in Portland and Seattle too, like Blue Star is amazing.
Yes.
If you know that one.
Mm-hmm.
Top Hot Donuts in Seattle is really good. And so back home, if I'm passing through to going to Eugene, we stop through, and and Voodoo Donuts obviously too is kind of kitschy and cool, but like in terms of quality, like Blue Star in Portland is probably my favorite donut is Blue Star, I would say, out west. So
are you like a standard like glazed donut or jelly powder? What do you have a go-to that's like your tried and true?
I don't discriminate. I'll put it that
Okay.
way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I loved about living in Southern California is like every third corner there's a strip mall, and there's like a dry cleaners, right? There's I love Mexican food. And West Coast, like California is like amazing. And there's a couple places in India pretty good, but like I got to get back out to California to really feel it, but there's a couple places that are pretty close here. But there's a Mexican place, there's a dry cleaners, and there is a really good donut spot. And that's one of the things I miss about amongst the people, the cultural mix of people, certainly, but are kind of having these kind of hole in the wall donut places and hole in the wall Mexican spots. And so that's one thing I miss from my time in kind of LA County.
Yeah. Well, Coach, when Jimmy and I lived in Denver, we were about a quarter of a mile from one of the Voodoo Donuts, and we probably overdid it one too many times on a Saturday evening, and I don't think either one of us has had many donuts since we lived in Denver.
Yeah, I love and the one in Portland is really cool because there's the long line and you get to hang with people and whatever. But yeah, I was in Eugene, obviously for nationals, and I circled back to one, and it was so huge. I almost put me in a diabetic state. I think it was filled or something like that. And I was like, I can take this thing on, and like you eat half of it, right? And you're like, I'm not going to save the other half of it, right? And then you're just like,
why did I do this to myself?
on a buzz, yeah. So, but yeah, I love the originality of Voodoo, and kind of, and that it speaks really, I would say, poignantly to kind of the Portland area and the vibe there, which is kind of quirky and cool. Which, if I were to describe Rob Connor, I would say he's quirky and cool. So, yeah.
Well, Coach Roe, I want to thank you so much for this amazing conversation we had tonight. Part of the reason we get to do this, everyone likes to root for all the colleges that they know and they see, but Rich and I get inside baseball with the coaches and get to know the coaches. And this was an absolute great conversation, and getting to know you as a person. We're going to be rooting for Butler a little bit harder. So thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Well, we're all here to serve the athletes, and I appreciate you guys, providing me this forum, but also really digging in, because our sports are important and we need to keep them alive. And I say that very much about the sport of wrestling, which I have great admiration for. And we obviously, the challenges that have long been associated with wrestling and keeping it alive at the collegiate level. But I don't know if there's a sport that I have a greater respect for than wrestlers. And I think wrestlers and runners, there's a shared commitment in that, and it's so valuable for all of us, right? And so hopefully we can keep these sports alive, because they're so meaningful to so many people, and they provide so many great life lessons. I wish the people that had the deep pockets would realize that about Olympic sports. And I appreciate anybody who's promoting that. So I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well said, Coach. You might find a diamond in the rough that's a multi-sport, that's a wrestler and a runner. Jimmy and I were two of those guys. They're tough as nails.
Oh, 100%.
maybe not always the best athletes, but they will definitely grind themselves into the ground for you. So we
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that and the respect that you have for it, and the respect we have for you. We do wish you the best of luck with the indoor season and as you head into outdoor season as well. But it was an honor to get to know you and chop it up with you a little bit. And like Jimmy said, we'll be rooting for the Bulldogs come nationals.
Appreciate that. Thanks, guys. I'm really honored that you had me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's an honor to have you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Coach Matt Roe from Butler. Make sure you go give the Bulldogs some love on Instagram. Let them know the Airey Bros sent you. That is it for us this week. We do appreciate you tuning in. We will be back next week on Tuesday, March 10th. John Fraser will be joining us from Texas State. We'll be talking track and field and cross country. And then on Thursday evening, we're going to be lacing up the boots and stepping onto the mat. Billy Gordy from Andrew College is going to be joining us, and we're going to go belly